Let's take a moment before we begin our Kriya Yoga Sunday service. Let's take a moment to center, do a centering meditation. So closing your eyes, sitting up straight, turning your attention within. Give yourself permission to let go of all distractions just for now. Feel deeply into the body, noticing the temperature, the sensations within the palms of the hands. The temperature and sensation within the soles of the feet. Then feeling into the body, into the legs, into the arms, to the abdomen and torso. Noticing the movement of the body as you breathe. The temperature within the abdomen. The spaciousness within the lungs. The feeling of structure in the ribs and the strength of the muscles within the body. Just give yourself permission to move more inward, to allow for an inwardly directed consciousness. We'll take a moment to honor and acknowledge the teacher representatives of this Kriya Yoga tradition, Mahavatar Babaji, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswar, Paramahansa Yogananda, Roy Eugene Davis, and all of their successors. You can also honor and acknowledge the teachers of all authentic Enlightenment traditions. So just feel as though that the field that these teachers represent, that these inspirational figures represent, that you are a part of that field. By thinking of them and their life example, your mind and your heart touches that field. And so is clarified, illumined. And maintain your awareness on your body and on your breath during the Sunday service today. Sensing, feeling that you are listening with your whole body and with your whole being. When you're ready, you can open your eyes and conclude the centering meditation. So today we're going to continue a contemplation that we've been going through this whole month of chitta prasadanam, the practice of making the mind beautiful or making the mind serene. And this is related to Sutra 33 within the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. And those of you who've been participating, you already know what we're doing. But those of you who haven't, the idea of chitta prasadanam relates to contemplating a few things, contemplating friendship towards experiences of happiness, seeing happiness in others, happiness within yourself, experiencing compassion, again, for yourself and for others, when there is sorrow or suffering, experiencing joy, or sometimes the word is translated as elation, joy or elation whenever you see or experience virtue in your life, either being with a virtuous person or you yourself being a little kinder than usual, or maybe a little more self-sacrificing in a positive way. And then the fourth aspect of this chitta prasadanam practice is practicing or experiencing equanimity or neutrality when you see, witness, experience non-virtue or vice or negativity. And this is a really important practice because in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali and with our Kriya Yoga practice, we learn certain techniques to internalize our attention and to experience greater spiritual awareness. But there's a lot of preparation that we have to do for that to work well. For example, many people come to meditation or the spiritual path because they're having some trouble or they want to experience greater clarity within their life, and they're not finding it just by living the way they've been living. And so they take up meditation or they take up yoga practices, and their idea is that that's what's going to make all the difference. But techniques and practices are really just exercises for your consciousness. And what you do with the rest of your day, how you utilize your mind, your field of consciousness at other times, that's what makes all the difference. So in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, there's a description of blocks that people can experience, blocks to their well-being and their spiritual growth. And there's a long list of them. Sickness, density, doubt, carelessness, lethargy, sexual preoccupation, erroneous perception, difficulty practicing yoga, instability and disruptions within the mind. These are the blocks that people experience. And oftentimes through our practice, this is what we're trying to get beyond. And Patanjali goes on to say that these blocks, you know that they're there when you experience pain, depression, restlessness of the body, and erratic breathing. Now, I want to qualify that by saying that Patanjali understands that pain, depression, and restlessness from time to time is normal because you're just a living organism and you go through phases of things. What he's talking about and what the sages are talking about are pathological pain or pathological depression or pathological restlessness, where you just can't shake it. It seems to be there all the time. So we have these blocks, the things that get in the way of clarity of awareness, that get in the way of our enlightenment, and then it results in pain and depression and restlessness. And Patanjali describes that the way to prevent these blocks, the way to not allow them to be difficult for you, not to become pathological, the way that you do that is by practicing, focusing on a single truth, a single truth. And what does he mean here? Well, he's telling you that in order to overcome these blocks and these difficulties, what you have to do is you have to start actively sculpting or resculpting your field of consciousness. Chitta is the word. Oftentimes it's translated as mind, but it's much more than just the thinking and labeling that you consider the mind to be. But it's the field of your consciousness, that which you experience, which is your emotions, your thoughts, your physical sensations, and so on. So the way that you move through these blocks is by contemplation of a single truth. And he gives a series of these. And the first one is this practice of chitta prasadanam, where you start shifting your attention and your awareness from the normal state of consciousness that most human beings experience, which is what? Things go well, people like it. Things go poorly, they get all upset. And if you step back and notice life and the lives of everyone and the lives of creatures and the lives of the planet, we go through seasons of things. And so there's always going to be this rise and this fall. And normal human consciousness just is pushed around by that all the time. But we have to remember that you're all here because you're a yogi. or you're an aspiring yogi, or you understand the benefit of yoga, and you realize that you just can't let yourself be pushed around all the time. I mean, what kind of life is that? It's unpleasant and uncomfortable because it seems like you're always at the mercy of what's going on around you. Well, the practice of yoga and the practice of spiritual practice, or all spiritual practice, I should say, is about learning to go within, to have an inward directed consciousness, and to remain consciously stable in your own inner well-being. And that requires that you're attuned to your infinite spiritual nature, And so how do you do that? Well, one of the prime ways is living your life such that when you see other people happy, and potentially is not talking about just your friends or the people that you agree with politically. He means anyone that you see who is happy, not because of maliciousness, they're just having a happy moment, that you are to find within you friendship towards that, an appreciation for it, of welcoming, wow, that person's happy. I'm so glad for them. Also, it requires that you yourself have to become friendly towards your own happiness. Friendly towards your own happiness. I don't know about you, but I know, just raised in the culture that I was raised in and being raised Catholic, sometimes we don't allow ourselves to appreciate the happiness that we have because of guilt or because other people are suffering and so on. Well, suffering goes on all over the world all the time. It's been going on since humans have been able to think. So now is not any different than 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago. Maybe the reason for suffering is different, but suffering is still going on. And so, what Patanjali is asking of us, what the sages are asking of us, is to step out of that negative bias and recognize when you have a moment of happiness, let it be there. Be friendly towards it, allow it. And you will find that through this chitta prasadana practice, you will realize it's not that easy, but you work towards it and you find out, why can't I be happy? Why can't I appreciate this moment of laughter? Or why can't I appreciate this moment where someone actually helped me and I felt really good about that? Or I was able to help someone else. You have to learn to watch how you interact with the world and watch how the world interacts with you. And what you're doing is you're looking, you're scanning, you're being curious about, well, where are these moments of happiness? Because they're there. Even in the most difficult situations, there will be a moment where you can just be with someone and be together and feel that comfort and that joy. Or you watch a TV show and you chuckle a little bit, or it's there. Or you look outside and you might have been going through a very difficult situation. You just happen to see the roses are blooming and you see the sunlight kind of sparkling on the dew. Well, that's a moment to look at and say, I extend friendship to this. I extend friendship to this. And what you're doing is you're resculpting your consciousness away from that which keeps you trapped in negativity. Now, Patanjali goes on to say that we need to be able to hold compassion, karuna, to extend compassion to others. And when you see someone else suffering, and it doesn't matter whether they're your friend, whether you share the same views, you just see someone suffering and you find a way to develop a greater spaciousness within you, a greater presence within you, not to try to change their situation unless you can, but most of the time we can't, but just to be there with them. Compassion, one of the origins of the idea of compassion is to be womb-like, like that which grows a child, to be womb-like. And so when you're being compassionate, you are just simply being with someone. And it goes for you as well. You have to learn to acknowledge when you are sorrowful, when you feel sad, to hold that space, not to try to force it away or beat it down or ignore it, but to hold the space where you can say, it's okay. I can feel this. I can acknowledge this sorrow. And I'm willing to be with it, to be spacious with it, to hold it without judgment. And what you find is when you begin to do that with others, and when you begin to do that with yourself, um, those sorrowful things don't wreck you like they used to, because you are allowing it. It's like when someone's really upset and you're not listening to them, they get more and more upset and they get more and more in your face about things. Well, this is what happens with the sorrow of others and also our own sorrow. The more we ignore it, it grows. Even if we're repressing it, it's still growing deep down inside there. But if we are womb like and we can hold space for it, allow it, just be with it, sit down, have a cup of tea, and cry a little bit. Um, the reason behind that, the energy behind that, in a sense, kind of feels heard and then is able to flow into the next moment, which might not necessarily require compassion. So we have to have this for others and we have to have this for ourselves. Experiencing joy and elation where there is virtue. Well, I'm sure most of you spend your days on social media complaining about this, that, or the other, or wondering why the world is the way it is and hoping that your Facebook posts are actually going to do something when maybe you could be doing something a little more, a little more useful. But anyway, you get on there and you see these things and you give it energy and attention to all the horror, the things that seem so wrong, the non-virtue, the negativity. And what Patanjali is saying is, well, you have to look around and acknowledge where there is virtue, again, in yourself and in others. And sometimes that's hard, but for myself, when I've struggled with that, I just think about my teacher, Mr. Davis, Roy Eugene Davis, who dedicated his entire life from when he was 18 years old until he passed to teaching meditation and yoga and being of service to those who were seeking spiritually. He spent his whole life doing that. What was it? 60, 70 years? Well, to me, that's virtue. That's something. Or I think about people who are parents who have sacrificed their time, their energy, or who knows, for their family and for their children. Well, that is virtue. And we have to celebrate it, acknowledge it. Or even in ourselves, if we just take a moment for prayer and meditation, it might not seem like much, but it's actually a virtuous act because it's bringing more light, clarity, and sattva into a person's experience. And if you can just simply acknowledge that, you end up seeing that there is maybe more virtue than you've allowed yourself to observe. So we have to look for and acknowledge virtue wherever we find it. Now, even the moment that you tell the truth for yourself, or that you act with integrity or authenticity, that's a virtuous thing to acknowledge. And this is not to pump up our spiritual ego. It's just to admit the fact that there is virtue within us. Yes, we fail a lot too, but if we look to the virtue, that actually begins to grow, and we feel more inspired to be around people who are virtuous, to help people who are virtuous, to ourselves live in a way that is more uplifting, more enlightening, more sattvic, more illuminating. The more we look for it, the more we want to put our attention towards it. And then we start to experience joy and elation when it is there. Now, Patanjali doesn't leave it at that. He doesn't say, just go out in the world and be a Pollyanna thinking everything is great all the time. No, clearly he mentions compassion is important, but he also says you have to experience neutrality or equanimity when there's non-virtue. So he's admitting clearly there are going to be times where it seems like there is non-virtue, because there is. That's living a human being. That's being a living human being on this planet at this time. Images, ideas, idealistic, utopian thoughts about how it could be, that's just a waste of your time. You're never going to have that utopian situation. There's going to be this rise and fall of society, up and down, a little bit better, a little bit worse. Your own life is going to do that. That's just the nature of things. However, as a spiritual being, what we're doing is we're recognizing that we don't have to be pushed around by that. We don't have to define ourselves by that, because the human experience is, in a way, like a school. And in this school, the the question that is there throughout everything is, what are you choosing? Are you choosing to remain caught up in being frustrated by all the light and darkness, the alternating light and darkness? Or are you choosing to recognize that's just the state of things, but I am a spiritual being. I am clarity. I am light. And that is the whole purpose of yoga and the spiritual process, is moment by moment making that choice towards light, towards clarity. And when there's sorrow, you do what you can, or you simply hold space. Where there's difficulty, if you can't do anything about it, you practice contentment. If you can take action and you're not just being pathologically foolish about it, thinking that you can save the world, then you take action. But you learn to observe negativity and lack of virtue with neutrality. Because when you do that, you are no longer feeding that quality of attention within your life. And by doing all this is the chitta prasadnam practice. By keeping this in your mind, you can meditate on it, you can contemplate it, but you go into the world and you're curious. And by curious, I mean, it's like you're looking around in the way that, if you've ever wanted to buy a new vehicle and you're looking for a particular model, well, now all of a sudden you see them everywhere, right? It's like, wow, everyone's got a gray, Ford Pinto or something like that. I had no idea. Well, you weren't looking for it before. And so part of this chitta prasadnam practice is to start directing you to look for opportunities for compassion for yourself and others, to look for opportunities to recognize joy and extend friendship towards it, to look for opportunities to appreciate virtue when you see it, when you're around it, when it's there. And then at other times, you practice equanimity because you know the nature of things and you have lucidity about it, rather than just getting bogged down in the negativity. So this is a very different way to live than pretty much everyone else that might be around you. But you have to ask yourself, am I a yogi, or do I just want to live like everyone else? If you just want to live like everyone else, that's fine. You do that. In time, your consciousness will evolve. You'll go through countless incarnations until you eventually, after 4,000 to 6,000 years, arrive in the Satya Yuga, and then you say, "Oh, it's great here, wonderful." Well, that's just because you just let things happen, and you went through thousands of years of painful human incarnations. But what the yogi is doing is learning to evolve through saying, "Where am I right now? This is where I am. This is the society I live in. This is the family that I have. These are the people that are around me. These are the opportunities that I have." And then looking around in there and searching for how to put your attention on happiness, on compassion, on virtue, and then not letting the rest bother you, essentially, because you can't do anything about it anyway. It's just the nature of the world. So this is one of those practices that Patanjali says, excuse me, if you focus on that, then these blocks to your enlightenment, to your spiritual realization, these blocks go away. He doesn't say, do more Kriya Pranayamas, then the blocks will go away. He doesn't say, do more alternate nostril breathing, then the blocks will go away. Now, there is some pranayama aspects to all of this later on, but this is where he starts. And if you can start there, then your meditation practice opens up because you're not disturbed. You're appropriate to the moment. Then, as you contemplate your spiritual texts or the words of your teachers, they make more sense to you and you're more inspired and you wake up with that inspiration and that inspiration permeates your life. So this whole month, we're on day 23 of it, where we've been every morning at 7 a.m., at least Eastern time, contemplating this together. And it's been quite amazing how many people have shown up for it. But you can do this on your own, and you should do this on your own every day. Wonder and realize that if you're not used to behaving or thinking in this way, you might come up against a lot of resistance to it. All the reasons why you shouldn't celebrate virtue in others, all the reasons why you shouldn't allow yourself to be happy or to appreciate the happiness in others, all the reasons why you don't have the ability to experience compassion. That can come up. However, that's also important, because if that resistance comes up, that means your yoga is working, and what's being revealed to you is what you need to work on, right? So that's the beautiful thing about this whole yoga process, is that as you do it, even those experiences where you think you're failing, where you just can't do it, well, from a yogi's perspective, and if you had a guru who could help you with this, they would say, all right, well, let's step back and figure out what's getting in your way. Why can't you allow yourself a little bit of happiness? Why can't you allow yourself a little bit of compassion? And if you can explore those things, figure them out, then it becomes easier to practice chitta prasadnam. Then the blocks go away quicker, and your meditation becomes more illuminating and revealing. And then you really start to experience what you heard about in Autobiography of a Yogi, or you really start to experience what you see in the serenity of your meditation teacher when you go on retreat with that person. And hopefully your meditation teacher is serene, because they should be doing chitta prasadnam too, making their mind serene. And this is how you grow, and this is how you remove the blocks. Now, Patanjali goes on to talk about other things too. We're not going to get into those, but some of them relate to feeling deeply into the body, becoming aware of the subtle sensations in the body. That's another way to clarify chitta, which is why you often hear me start meditations that way. Patanjali talks about contemplating sorrowless, and luminous perceptions. And that's a really great one. That means that you spend time actually focusing more on what you consider to be sorrowless, which is free of that connotation, but also luminous and uplifting. You have to turn your mind towards it. It's also clarified by contemplating the minds of others who are clear and enlightened. That's why we attune to the tradition, or we attune to spiritual teachers before we meditate and so on, because by doing that, that allows your own chitta, your own field of being, to become clarified, which also removes these blocks. But it all comes down to the practice of a single truth, right? That's kind of the emphasis there, of determining, of these options that Patanjali gives. And there's a few of them. You need to pick one, and you need to commit your mind to it so that it becomes light, luminous, serene itself. And when you have that, then there's more sattva within your life. And when there's more sattva, you actually see things with greater perspective, which means there comes a point in time where you don't have to just have equanimity because you're forcing it. You just see the reality of it. You see the history of life, and the difficulties come and they go. And so you don't let them ruin your inner state of consciousness. One thing I really like to encourage people to do is to just read a little bit, do a little bit of research how people were treated, how they lived, what they thought, how they behaved 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago. Just even if you need to get into some historical nonfiction, right? or historical fiction, whatever, where they make up a story that's based on something that's kind of true. Even if that's all you do, if you start to see how people lived, how they heated their houses, how governments treated them, you've got troubles now, sure, but you end up seeing with greater perspective just the drama of being human through time. And that in and of itself can help to encourage um, greater clarity, greater equanimity, and so on. So, your role as a human being is to wake up in this lifetime. You do that by meditating every day, by engaging in prayer practice, if that's what is inspiring for you. But you also do it by consciously cultivating your chitta, your mind, your field of consciousness. And the way you do that is by choosing where you direct your attention and directing your attention to things which are light, clear, and buoyant. And if you do that, will problems go away? A lot of them might, but not all of them. But if you do that, then when a problem arises, you recognize you have the faith, the support to either know what to do or to simply endure and let it pass. And then your life becomes, in a sense, more of a recognition of grace. So this is why we want to contemplate this idea of chitta prasadnam and kind of commit our life to it beyond our meditation. And if you want to learn more, we're specifically talking about Sutra 33, Sutra 33 of Chapter 1 in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. All right. So take that with you, consider it, figure out ways that you can begin to incorporate it in your life. And one of the best ways is just to be more curious. Rather than going into your day expecting it to be the same black and gray humdrum of whatever your life is like, wake up. And the first thing you contemplate or wonder is, where will I where will I catch a glimpse of happiness today? Will I see it maybe when I'm at the grocery store? Will I meet someone? Will I be able to celebrate that in them? Will I be able to feel good for them that they have a moment of happiness? Contemplate, when will I have an opportunity to hold a moment of compassion for someone? I don't have to fix their problems, but I can just be there for a moment in a meaningful way. And when can I do that for myself? Can I look around and find people that I have known or people that I know that really are virtuous? You know, you feel good around them. You can trust them. They live a meaningful life and they do their best to be authentic and true. Can I just think about them for a minute and just be happy that I know them? And then as far as equanimity, can I just have greater perspective and not let myself get caught up in all the drama just for a little while? And the more you do that, the more it grows, the easier it becomes, and it really changes the whole trajectory of your your life and your spiritual path. So let's meditate together. So don't think too much about what we've been discussing. Just let it be in your mind and in your consciousness. It'll make sense to you as time goes on. For now, just close your eyes, sit up straight, turn your attention within, and feel the breath as it moves in and out of your body. Feel the sensation of your clothes moving as your chest and belly rise and fall. Notice how your head feels, like deep within your skull, up into your sinuses, between your ears. Just notice any pressure or tension or softness, openness. And feel down into your heart, noticing where your heart is, how it feels, the bones, the ribs, the structure of the torso, the feeling of the organs, the lungs, down into the belly. Remember, one of the processes is sensing the subtle sensations within the body. So we can begin in this way. Just a little more body awareness. We can also turn our attention to the teachers that have inspired us, or the people who've spiritually inspired us. And looking into your mind's eye. If you can, see the faces or consider the impact that certain people have had on your life, spiritually speaking. And know that by thinking of them, remembering what you learned from them, how they have inspired you or uplifted you, that your own chitta, field of consciousness, is filled with the same light, the same spaciousness, the same clarity that they represent. And letting go of that, or for the next 13 minutes or so, I'd like to encourage you to use a meditation technique that tends to work well for you. Let it be your focus. Sink your attention into it. And we'll meditate together silently for the next 12 minutes. And let go of whatever technique you've been using. Withdrawal. Feel as though you're pulling your attention more fully into the heart. Wherever you feel the heart chakra to be, deep within the chest, between the shoulder blades, feel that area. And imagine that space is light, full. You can imagine even a sense of golden particles of light, radiant and flowing through the heart. And as you feel the heart, consider your day or the time ahead. And if your heart was curious, if it was looking for, would be happy to see a moment of happiness, something delightful for yourself, where you see someone else smiling or laughing or just feeling good. Feel the heart as though it is friendly towards that experience, as if you know you can take a moment. Just say, that's great. I'm glad to see that, to feel that. I appreciate that. So you might not know what it is, but you are with your heart being curious, willing to acknowledge that as a possibility for your day. And then feeling the heart as though there is a soft spaciousness within the heart. Acknowledge that you can be curious, not afraid, not shutting down in any way, but you can be curious. If you see someone in sorrow, that you're willing to just hold a space for them if that's all you can do, or to try to share a kind word. You're open to that possibility. And you're also open that if you catch a glimpse of sorrow, a bit of depression or sadness, whether you understand it or not, if you can just take a moment, just give yourself space to let it be, to have compassion for yourself, and to let out whatever you need to express. Now, we're not making this stuff happen. You're not forcing yourself to look for sorrowful things. You're just open to it, should it arise. And then you can consider virtue, either thinking of someone who is virtuous, or you see another person helping out in a way they didn't have to, or you yourself can be more honest today, more kind. And you can feel joy, elation, again, a celebration of that virtue. Sometimes when I go to sleep at night, before I go to sleep, I see all the books that I have of the Yoga Sutras, the Bhagavad Gita, and other important texts. And I'm happy that those people wrote those books, that they took the time out of their life to make it possible to share something so valuable, at least to me. And then turning your attention to equanimity, just being curious. Today, how can I not get so caught up in the drama? How can I expand my perspective to step back and focus more on lucidity? And you can even give yourself permission to be neutral, to have equanimity, because, you know, most of you are addicted to the drama. And so if you give yourself permission to let go of it, the addiction lessens. And feel all this within your heart, all these possibilities, knowing that you are prepared now to explore chitta prasadnam, making the mind serene, making the mind beautiful, which allows the blocks to spiritual growth and spiritual realization to fall away, which allows your practice to become deeper and exactly what it's meant to be, full, full of grace. We'll chant Om 3 times together to conclude this Sunday service. Peace.